Hello, this is Tennyson, and today I'll be talking about some new tech that I discovered at the end of January 2023. If I had to categorize it, it would have to be a reset that has some basic but particular inputs tied to it. One might ask, why do something fancy when you can just reset with 4B? And to that, I say that this new setup has even more layers for the opponent to keep track of. You can choose to go for this reset from any starter, including Assault, as long as it leads into your main combo, which is 5B, 214B, JAB, J6C. However, instead of doing a 4B at this point like you normally would, you will let your opponent air tech, and you'll be using this air tech to your advantage. Also, this reset is universal, so there's no character-specific interactions to worry about. From the J6C, there are 3 ways that this can resolve, and it all depends on how the opponent air techs. They can back tech, neutral tech, or forward tech. You must make the correct read on which direction they will tech before they actually do it. There is no health risk to making an incorrect read, but it may still be detrimental to the round in certain situations. This section will cover back techers. After the J6C, buffer a dash as you land, then perform a delayed 6-6C from that dash. And at this point, you can hold forward to slip behind your opponent, or hold back to stay on the same side. There's a 25 frame window between when you initiate your dash and when your attacks will be considered dashing, so you'll have quite a bit of room to work with. If you're starting from an assault button, you'll need to micro walk before the dash in order to get far enough to slip under your opponent. In the event that you guessed incorrectly, here's what you can expect. Neutral techers will land at about a round start distance from you, while forward techers will be almost full screen. In order to take advantage of neutral techers, get your setup started. After the J6C, land and immediately perform a forward jump, then dash. You will just barely slip behind your opponent. If you guessed wrong here, back techers will still be at a favorable range for regular Oki, and forward techers will be at about a round start distance from you. This is overall the least worst outcome for guessing wrong. Punishing forward tech is similar to neutral tech. After the J6C, land, but perform a backwards jump this time, then dash. Again, you'll just barely slip behind your opponent. If you were wrong, the results will be similar to a missed back tech read. Back techers will be full screen, and neutral techers will be at about a round start distance from you. Since we've talked about the basic setup, now we can move on to some strategies that can be shared between them. After establishing your mix-ups, spice things up with a God Press, or a delayed 236B. If you do 236B too early though, you'll end up swinging the wrong way, so make sure to pace yourself. Avoid using JC, because the opponent can hold either 4 or 6 and block it from either direction. With some extra practice, each of these setups could be made safe from veil off by using a meaty 1A 214B. Just take care of which side you end up on so that you don't accidentally get 2A instead. When deciding if I want to go for this reset, there are 5 things that I quickly take into consideration first. I check my opponent's health, I check how much meter I have, I look at the position of the characters on screen, I consider the starter that I used, and I check the status of the grid cycle. First, I check my opponent's health because there's no benefit to resetting someone who will die to a complete combo. Then I check to see if I need to spend meter anytime soon. If I'm getting close to approximately 170%, I'm generally looking to meter dump instead. It's a good idea to try to avoid staying at 200% for too long, since you're essentially wasting meter by the time your next combo comes around. Then I check the character positions on screen because this technique does not work if your opponent is too close to the corner. Things can also get a little awkward if your opponent is too high or too low. Next, I estimate how much damage and how much Oki I might be sacrificing. I usually aim to reset from a 2A or a tip range 2B starter if I can connect the follow-up since they do the least damage. And finally, I look at the current state of the grid cycle and use concentration if I need to win the next one. This also gives me a chance to observe my opponent's teching habits while generating resources. Ultimately, there are a surprising number of ways to begin this mix-up, but to go over each and every one of them in their entirety would take much longer than explaining the basics like I did here. I hope you can have as much fun as I did when I first discovered these interactions.
まず